This is the Voice of Florida Architecture. I'm your host, Rhonda Hammond, AIA. Today we have a special episode for you. It's the inaugural for a new series that we've created. AIA Florida has a long, robust history of setting the bar for association excellence, financial stewardship, and collaborating for its local component success, and organizing conventions that are the envy of the nation, all due to the leaders that have come before us. We are launching a special series of conversations with past presidents and leaders of the association that have had impact on the profession and the association that we enjoy today. This podcast series is dedicated to honoring the longstanding members whose leadership, service, and commitment have helped shape AIA Florida and the architectural profession at both the state and national level. These individuals represent an extraordinary depth of experience and institutional knowledge, an invaluable resource that continues to inform our work today. Through a series of conversations, we will reconnect with those architects who have served AIA Florida and the American Institute of Architects in meaningful leadership roles throughout their professional careers and into their retirement. We will explore their professional journeys, gain insight from their perspectives on the evolution of the profession, and reflect on the challenges and opportunities that have defined their careers. Most importantly, this series provides an opportunity to listen, learn, and preserve the wisdom of those who have dedicated their time and talents in service to the profession. Their reflections, advice, and guidance offer meaningful context for today's practitioners and inspiration for future members of the association, reinforcing the enduring value of leadership, service, and mentorship within AIA Florida. Our first guest of this series is a father and son architect team, and I'd like to introduce Angel Saqui, FAIA, and his son, Angel Saqui, II, AIA. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you both for being with us today.
Pleasure being with you.
Mr. Saqui, you have a fascinating story. There is much that we can delve into. You're an architect, a builder, you're a firm owner, and your son has joined your firm. You're a musician, an author, and you're the regional director for the AIA Florida Caribbean region, former president of the National Association of Cuban Architects, and a member of the College of Fellows. As is our tradition here at the Voice of Florida Architecture, we start with your journey on becoming an architect. Tell us about your decision to become an architect and your journey to practicing within the United States.
Actually, it started when I was 14 years of age, and I was visited by an architect who was a friend of my father, Orlando Dominguez Aja, and he talked to me into getting into the School of Trades, Arts and Trades, which taught us everything that is necessary to build a house and calculate the structures. An amazing school. So I did listen to his advice, went into the school and spent 4 years in it. At the end, the first thing that happened was that I was called by a family friend of my parents, to build a house for them right there, brand new, no experience. I did it, a two-story house, did it, and then came a second house, and then came a two-story apartment building, and then came a five-story apartment building. It's one thing after the other, and it progressed until I was already in the construction industry. But from the School of Arts and Trades, we could go directly into the School of Architecture of the University of La Habana, which I did, and several years later, I was an architect, and that's how it all started. I have a very interesting story about architecture, and it is that the first job that I had during the Castro regime was for Fidel Castro himself, a school city for 20,000 children in the mountains where he fought the revolution. And the last project I did in Cuba before coming to the United States was another project for Fidel Castro himself. So it's something like It was in my stars to be working for this guy. And there is so much to tell about it that we won't have time to speak about. But that's the starter.
Well, we will absolutely have to cover that. We'll have to come to Miami so that we can sit down and learn that story. So you eventually made it to the United States, and I believe that you started out in Atlanta before you moved to Miami.
Correct, Atlanta. 3.5 years.
And then you served as the Florida Caribbean Regional Director. What was it like at the national level, serving at that level?
At the national level, it's a different world. You are in contact with everybody from everywhere, and you meet people who you never thought you would meet, and
That's
also
nice.
from outside the United States, from Japan, from China, from Mexico. It's
Hmm.
amazing. Now, being in the national board gives you the opportunity of doing things that you always wanted to do, but you could not. Like my main point was the small firms. Once I got into the national board, the first thing I started talking about was the small firms, how to get work for the small firms from the national agencies, from the federal agencies. And I had this opportunity to go the first month in the board. The first question I asked them is, how do small firms get work from you guys? And I got an answer which disappointed me. They said, we don't want to do work directly with small firms. What? You don't? Is that discrimination? No. We prefer to do work with larger firms that hire small firms and make them part of their team. I said, well, I already tried that with a couple of big firms, but they would not want me because they already had somebody. So how could I get work for them? And that was a no-no all the time. And I spent my 5 years in the board. I say five because I was three elected for, and then two afterwards. It was an onwards struggle, try to get the small firms recognized. I went to the Small Business Administration, nothing. So the AIA did not have a small firms committee.
Hmm.
It did have a large firms committee, which is strange. I said, well, how come the AIA has a large firms committee and not the small firms? And one thing that I did was propose to create a small firms committee. It had to go to a national convention through a resolution. So I prepared the resolution and took it to the 2001 convention. Board of directors did not like that idea, and they turned it off from the convention. And instead, they did something like a small firms group.
I think they call it exchange, small firm exchange that they have today. So you were championing that idea even way back.
Always my championing idea, the small firms, and how
Hmm.
to get work for them, not only the architects, but the engineers and the builders. And my son right now has made an effort to bring this back. He prepared a seminar on this subject, how to get
Hmm.
work and how to make more money, because that's another problem with this more firms, not making enough money.
We're going to get him to share with that here momentarily. Because he has been a champion with that, both at national level when we were at national a couple years back, and while his work is in Miami. Let's talk about you moving to Miami and opening your firm in Miami. What was Miami like back then?
Miami was a growing city, really growing. When I arrived in Miami, you could go through the highway and you would see one car out there and the next one 1 mile away. Now you go through the same highway, the I-95, and it's loaded, completely
Hmm.
loaded. It's a different city. It's grown exponentially, and it's the place to be, really. And I hear that lots of people from different cities are coming to Miami now because they are running away from their own cities. Miami is like the place to be, really. I enjoy very much being here. We have the beaches, the weather, the
Hmm.
restaurants, oh, the Cuban restaurants. Oh, it's amazing what you can eat in those places.
So, what about being AIA Miami president? Tell us about your tenure.
When I was AIA Miami president, that was again my forte, getting work. I did a lot of seminars, of reunions, and I created two programs. One with the county for providing their small work for small businesses of architects, engineers, and builders, which is still active today. It's interesting because all you have to do is qualify. Once you qualify, they rotate the small work. You get one, and then you have to wait for the next one, the rotation, and then you get another. Also created in the school board, in the Miami-Dade County School Board, a program also to share the small school projects with small firm architects, which was successful. I can say that I did obtain or attain what I was looking for.
Which has served the small firms that have come after you. So your son has followed in your footsteps and become an architect and work in the firm. What does it mean to you running a successful firm that your son now is involved in? What does that mean to you?
It was always my dream to have my son and my daughter work with me in my firm. Angel was the one that started. I tried to get my daughter, she studied architecture, but she got enticed into singing and she tried to become an opera singer. She went to Milano to prepare for opera, and she did develop a magnificent voice. But at the end, she left architecture, and now she is in business in Milan with her husband. But my son took over my business, and he's now doing everything that I dreamed of doing. The relationship is fabulous, fabulous. And another thing, that he was the one that made me the time available to serve in the national board, in the state AIA, in the National Association of Cuban Architects. If it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't have had the time. That's something that I appreciate very much.
All right, Angel.
Good
You hear
morning.
that?
Good morning,
How
Rhonda
are
and everyone
you?
else. It's a privilege and an honor to be interviewed on this podcast and to not only listen to some of the words from my own father, which are very pleasant to hear. So I'll let you go ahead and ask away. I was getting a little anxious there. You know, one of the things that he perhaps didn't make clear is that School of Arts and Trades was really like a high school. So when he graduated from there, he was 17 years old. So can you imagine a 17-year-old today being commissioned to build a two-story house right from the gate,
No,
right out of the
no,
gate?
not at all.
And that's the level of education and training that these young people were being given back in 1951. 1951. Anyway, I had to throw that in because that may have been lost in the conversation. Because even for me today, that's still mesmerizing thought.
So, what was your father's influence on you becoming an architect?
From even my earliest childhood memories, I remember being thrown into the car, dragged onto job sites, getting nails stuck into my feet somehow. I've been cut up, as a kid, lots of tetanus shots. I mean, it was probably just training on the spot, for a child to be exposed to this, which I think is an important part of any parent's responsibility to their children. Take your kids to where you work. And I know that as of late, those have been programs that have been instilled in a lot of companies. Take your child to work day. And I know it has a
Hmm.
tremendous influence because it did on me. All throughout school, I always admired and subliminally could not tell you that I understood what was going on, but I know that it had a tremendous effect on me to watch something being created on paper and then all of a sudden have the building blocks that I was tossing and grabbing hammers and nails and trying to, as a kid, put some sort of Legos with real building blocks together, come to fruition and come to reality in life. And I think that that's exactly what happened to me. By the time I graduated high school, all my friends were talking about becoming attorneys and doctors and lawyers and accountants. I went to Miami Beach Senior High School where it was a very prominent high school with a lot of affluent children. The only thing I kept thinking about was doodling on a piece of paper while I was in class, in calculus and trying to put all kinds of geometrical figures that match the geometry lessons in the school classroom for math, and then ultimately that's exactly what happened. I just came into drafting one when I graduated immediately.
It's a beautiful story. I had no idea that you and your dad had so much in common, and he had so much influence, even down to, like, he talked about the small firms. He championed the small firms at the national level and in Miami. And now that, knowing that, and then being there when you were president of AIA, Miami, you had the same passion for the business side of architecture. Tell us what you feel is your greatest achievement as AIA Miami president.
In 2024, I became AIA Miami's president, which I'm very proud of. Growing up all these years with whom I consider as a Renaissance man, which is my father. He's not only my father, he's my mentor, he's a confidant. Everything that I learned throughout life, I learned from him. Of course, my mother and my parents both. But when it comes to the professional side, he's always been a very stern-minded individual. For anyone who likes astrology, he's an Aquarian. And if anybody knows anything about Aquarius folks, they beat to their own drum. There has never been anyone more or exemplary of that particular astrological sign as my dad, because no one could ever steer him in any direction other than the one that he wanted to go into, no matter what. So I grew up thinking that I was living in a house with Leonardo da Vinci, but Clint Eastwood at the same time. So, because if I ever strayed, I got pulled back real quick, and he would just look at me and say, "Go ahead, make my day. Go ahead, make my day." And it was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I grew up with that same mentality. And as I became a mature architect, it dawned on me that there were a couple of things that not only had been instilled in me as a young professional by watching and observing and participating. I've always been a member of the AIA from the moment that I graduated from the University of Miami. I became licensed in 1988, and that whole journey has been the reason why today I feel so compelled and so passionate about not only expanding on the business of architecture, which is one of my most important leadership roles as I was elected to be president, but also to engage the emerging professionals to understand that you didn't go to school just to draw pretty pictures. And one of the things that even you, Rhonda, and have been working with the state schools is to join not only the design aspect of architecture, but to also introduce the construction aspect and the business aspect of our professions with the deans of these schools, which I would like to add that I congratulate you to the fullest extent that I may, because you are one of those few that during your presidency at state, you shined in that light and even continued to influence me to recognize if you don't know your building blocks, you're never going to maximize your design capabilities because you don't know how to put these things together. So when I tell these emerging professionals that what we're creating as architects are instructions manuals for the contractors and the developers to build, we've got to understand that those instructions manuals are comprised of building components. And who better to understand those components than us, who can creatively put them together to really create incredible spaces for humans to live, work, and play. I know you'll love that statement because that was
Yes,
part
I
of your
do.
motto, live, work, and play, when you were president. And I've taken those words and continue to profess them because that's what I think architects really do. One of the slogans that I created when I was president was that since the beginning of time, architects have created one of the four essential necessities for human life to exist and sustain, and that is shelter. And only nature and God can provide the remaining air, food, and water. And when I resonated this throughout my entire tenure as president and even as immediate past president, people actually started listening and understanding how important we are as architects. And I believe that we really should continue the message because it now personifies why we should be paid commensurately for our services, as opposed to just being a mere necessity to the development part of our business because we need building permits. It's not about the building permits. It's about creating those instructions manuals and creating them with not only art, space, but also the understanding that someone will ultimately have to build these. And because you have someone that can build them from a very good set of instructions manuals called construction documents, our developers, clients, owners will not only save money, they'll save time, which equates to even more money down the road. And that is at least a couple of the things that I've been very, very proud to continue to exemplify and bring to our over, I want to say, 1,000 licensed architects here at AIA Miami. Because today, when I have put together seminars not only for these topics, including accounting for architects, we just had a recent accounting for architects and your bottom line before the end of the year. We had over 60 people signed up for this thing. You think maybe because we're interested, some of us are interested, hey, how can we make more money at this? For the first time in 2024, when I was at Grassroots, I finally heard the national AIA come together and say, it's okay for us as architects to make money. We haven't heard this for over 25 years, at least since I've been a young architect. And if you look at the color of my hair, which I'm happy to have hair, I'm not going to lie, I've been talking about these things for a while. And I think it's finally come around. I think the paradigm shift has taken place. And I'm very, very proud that during my presidency, it really came out strong here at Miami.
As Angel was talking about that he wanted to be a member of AIA since he was a very young person, a very early architect. You're a long-standing member of AIA. Why is it important to be a member of AIA for the practicing architect?
It's a long story. When I entered the University of La Habana to study architecture, I saw in the architectural magazines, Architectural Record, Progressive Architecture, and L'Architecture d'Aujourd'hui, I saw the buildings that were made by those architects who had the three letters AIA after their names. And I was wondering, wow, those architects, how magnificent. One day I am going to have those letters after my name. It took me a lot of years. That was 1951. Then I was only able to get those letters in 2070. That's a long time ago and a long struggle to get there. But to me, the AIA was the reason to be an architect because it is the heart of architecture. When those guys in New York created the AIA, they went directly into the basis of knowledge of the AIA. At that time, there were no schools of architecture teaching architecture in the United States. If you wanted to be an architect, you had to go to Europe to like all the Beaux-Arts, or you
Yep.
have to work as an apprentice to another architect, or you could just put a sign in the front of your house saying architect, and that was okay. You didn't need a license, you didn't need anything. And those guys in New York created the basis for the schools of architecture, architecture as a profession, and how to learn architecture. And from there on, architecture became a profession, really. So that's, thought, my goodness, this is the place to belong to, the heart of the profession. So that's why I wanted to be a member of the AIA. At that time, when I was dreaming about the AIA, there was no College of Fellow yet. So that was not even a dream. It came afterwards.
So
And
that was going to be my next question. I didn't want to get away from this conversation with you without talking about your elevation into the College of Fellows. So, that is the top honor that AIA gives its members. Talk to us about that. Tell us about your experience, and then tell us why you feel the College of Fellows is important and an institute that we should protect.
well, I feel that the College of Fellows does things that aren't done anywhere else, because we are not restricted by the rules and regulations. We have different rules and different regulations. And to me, to be a fellow is to have the opportunity to teach other architects how to develop into the profession. And this is what I have been doing. I have been helping architects ever since and before still at my age, 93 years, I still am helping architects. That's the reason I thought for being a fellow.
So you've also had the privilege of watching AIA Florida grow and evolve over many years. And congratulations on 93. It's an honor to be with you here and to learn about your perspective. But what advice would you give the leaders of AIA Florida that stems from your years of watching it grow?
Tell people what architecture is, what the AIA is, what the AIA does. Lots of people have asked me, what does the AIA do for me? And I keep telling them every time, don't ask me that. Don't ask me what the AIA does for you. Ask me what you can do through the AIA for the profession, and which is completely different, because once you get into the AIA, you have the opportunity to do things that from outside you cannot do. You have the resources and the media of the AIA. Really, you have to be a member. You have to become a member. And so I say, well, but the money, it's nothing. There was a time in which I was chairing the new membership resources committee in Miami and in the state. One thing that I was telling people is, look, to become a member of the AIA only costs you, at that time it was 1 cup of coffee a day. Now it's a little bit more, but it's nothing. It's still nothing. To
So
become,
is the cup of coffee.
Yeah.
yeah, well, depends where you have it. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah. There are places in which it costs you much more than that. Yeah, and
Yes.
you can tell me that you don't drink a cup of coffee a day. You don't have the money to pay 1 cup of coffee a day to be a member of the architectural profession's most powerful association, and people don't have an answer for that. When I asked that question about the dollar a day, I got lots of people signing in right there.
We'll have to remember that question then.
I think that should be brought back. We should start talking about drinking more
Exactly.
coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
My goodness, there's so many things.
There
I,
are a lot of things. I'd like to say a few words for your own leadership. I think your leadership it continues to be outstanding. The advocacy alone, just with this podcast, that you continue with all the associates that are working hard here with you, editing this and setting all this up. This is incredible. This is the voice, exactly as it's called. What my father was just saying in his term advertised, this is exactly what it does. It gets the word out. I'm preaching to the choir here with all of you because you all understand this statement. How many people don't we speak to on a daily basis that really don't know what architects do?
Exactly.
It's amazing. They don't understand what we bring to the table. Everybody knows what a doctor does, what an attorney does, what an accountant does. So if there's one thing that I would like to mention here that we all need to do as architects is to talk to all of our other friends that are not architects and just have a conversation over coffee or over a drink one day and explain to them, by the way, do you really understand what I do? I'll tell you a short story. My wife's sister, I've known my wife since I met her at 16, and we dated for 9 years, and we've been married since 1987. I'll let you guys do the math. But she's known me all my life practically since 16 as well. She bought a house in Coral Gables. She had to gut it. They called me. To not extend the story, by the time we finished with that house, my sister hugged and kissed me stronger than she's ever hugged and kissed me before. And she said, I finally understand what you do for a living. And I found that, flattering, but I also found it astonishing that she's seen and been around me my entire professional career and still didn't quite understand what we do as architects. So with that explanation, having someone so close to us, can you imagine what it is to have strangers that have no clue what we do as architects? So if there's anything that we can do to help our own profession, is that we all need to talk about what we do more throughout our
Yeah.
entire day,
No,
and through all of our venues and platforms.
I agree. So, Mr. Saki, first of all, thank you for being here. It is an absolute honor to meet you, and I want to thank you for your service and your leadership that has prepared the way for those that have come after you, like your son and I, to be leaders. You have set the stage for our success. It's just a phenomenal to hear your story and listen to the love that you and your son share, not only for each other, but for the profession itself. So again, thank you, and thank you for being here.
I have one last thing to say. I am
Absolutely.
I'm finalizing a book right now that is called The Magical Life of an Architect, and it explains everything about architecture and the AIA. So it'll be out for print in about a month or so.
All right. Well, I'm going to be looking for a signed copy.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. That's phenomenal. Okay. Well, then you have to keep us posted on when the book comes out.
Sounds
Angel,
great.
thank you for helping us pull this together and for all you do for the profession.
Thank you, Rhonda. My pleasure. I will
Yeah,
continue to beat that drum.
absolutely. So thank you both for being here and helping us launch this most important of episodes and series. I hope our listeners have enjoyed our conversation with Mr. Saqui, FAIA and Angel Saqui II. Stay tuned as we continue the conversations with our past leaders. And if you have someone in mind that can add to our conversation, reach out to Chrissy or I. We'd love to hear from you. This is Rhonda Hammond, AIA, your host. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Voice of Florida Architecture, the podcast of AIA Florida. You can find us wherever you stream your podcasts.